fun to walk out to that music?
Yeah, it is.
It's
it
fun.
brings back a lot of memories, you know.
Wow, I'm looking out here. Look at all the fedoras. Look at everybody in the whips.
There are a few. Okay.
Yikes. Tony was trying the whip backstage. He didn't bring it out.
I know.
And if I look uncomfortable sitting here, you know why now.
Too many things to carry, you know. I had microphones and glasses. And,
yeah, we have to get comfortable. Don't mind us.
Yeah.
How's your night so far?
Cold.
All good? All good?
We're going to make it better.
How many have been on Indy so far tonight? How many of you are going to go on Indy tonight? That's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear. Now, I'm sitting here with a bona fide, I never knew what that word meant, but it's really fun to say, bona fide movie fan.
Yes, I am. Absolutely. The largest collection of Blu-rays and DVDs, I think, in Anaheim.
We were just talking about your Blu-rays, that they're now shiny Frisbees.
No, those are laser discs.
That's right, laser discs.
Yeah, I have those too.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we come to you folks, and to get, not for the answers, but to make sure we're on the right track. And we found a fun little piece here that was from that era where we went out into Disneyland and asked day visitors that back in that era what they might see or expect to find in an Indiana Jones attraction if we built one. And we're going to let you see some of that.
Yeah, pay very careful attention to these answers.
Yes.
Some might repeat, others are different.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Let's watch.
If you were to build an Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, what would you expect that night?
Oh, through caves, down a slide, horrible things happening. Okay. I'd have to have that thing with the big rock rolling down the little chute.
Snake fish. I want that big ball. That big ball.
You know that scene in the first Indiana Jones where that big huge ball comes
Well, I'd have to have snakes, bugs.
Going through where he has the big ball rolling out.
I like that big ball that comes out.
Like snakes. That's what Rob said. Things that roll at you and just really wild.
That's pretending things like you're gonna go in a fire, but when you really go in and spawn things like that.
We'll have to have the snake pit. Right.
Enslaved children.
Anybody else?
No, that would be enough.
That would be enough for us.
We've got most of those in there, don't you think?
How many of you would have said enslaved children right off the bat? Okay, for those, no, keep raising your hand. Who said that? You can go now.
This is Disneyland.
Yeah, this is Disneyland.
So here's a rendering done by Brian Jowers that shows you just about everything, the kitchen sink included. And I guess, how do I do this thing?
I got it.
Oh, well, I can point it.
Just point
I
lessons
don't want to advance the...
right there.
Okay, the little...
Lessons in lasers, right? The little
All
star.
right. So let's play Where's Waldo in this. You know, we had no budget at this time. You get to play it first, where they say, do what your heart's desire. You know, this is a fun time. So you can see the Jeep right there, or excuse me, the
Troop transport.
Yes. We do not have an official deal with the
Jeep people.
Yeah,
Tony, don't say Jeep, Tony.
Yeah, right.
Don't mention the Jeep people.
okay, now, if you really look hard, you can see the Jungle Cruise going through the ride in the middle here.
Wait a minute, and this rendering is so authentic, you can actually hear the train.
Right there. So
It's
imagine
amazing.
that noise, and it would be traveling right through on that upper level. And then the most obvious one of all is the mine car ride, which you can see in the loop running right through here. Wouldn't that have been an amazing thing to do? Okay.
Yes.
But you like the one that's here, right?
Yeah.
Get them all excited.
I know. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
Move the slide.
Yeah. Next.
Okay, so we were doing a little project at the same time that we were doing Indiana Jones. It was called Disneyland Paris. How many have been to our park over there?
The people who also like enslaved children.
Yeah.
Did you see there's going to be a run there?
They're over there. Now, Herbie Ryman had finished all the artwork that he had done for us in Paris, and he said, I have some free time, what would you like me to do? And we said, well, we're really hoping we can get something going with Indiana Jones. So this was just about the last artwork that Herbie ever did for Imagineering. And here are 3 pieces. Before we even had an idea of what it was going to be about, it was just that with the Star Wars licensing with Lucasfilm, we also got this guy thrown in. And truth be told, I like kind of Indy better than Han, but that's me. I'd like to hear anyone applaud. Looking forward to next year's treat, man.
This year. Boy, you know, it's 9 o'clock. They'll get excited about anything at 9 o'clock.
Wow. You're here for Indiana Jones.
That's right. Well, let's talk about this next rendering, which I had never seen before. Very, very odd. What is this?
Okay, this is the Fountain of Youth. We began playing around with why is everybody going to this temple? What is the point? And so we started thinking about what are some of the great things of mythology that would motivate the guests. And the first one that came to mind was finding the eternal youth, the Fountain of Youth. And so this is one of Brian Jower's early on concepts for that. And if you look, again, where's Waldo time? If you look up there, there's Indy with a torch looking down on the scene. Alex, who put this show together, Alex Williams, pointed that out to me, and I said, I don't think I remember seeing that when we did it.
Now, at this point in this rendering, the guests on the attraction are kind of passive.
Yeah.
They're not really engaged in the attraction.
And if you go to the next one, I think you'll see another example of that. This was before we had developed the idea of having Mara, that you actually threaten her rules. In this case, we just watched Indy do what he did in the film. And this is a sketch, a very beautifully done sketch by Brian with the Thuggies, and we kind of mixed the first film and the second one together. And we have Indy taking the idol off the plinth and setting into motion the cacophony of things that would come after you. But it's also kind of a book report, and I'm not a fan of book report rides. I like it where, like Peter Pan is my favorite early ride, where you leave the bedroom and come on everybody, here we go, and you experience the adventure and it's happening to you. And so we did this, and it sort of told us, you know, we really need to find a way of having the guests be responsible for all of the calamities that occur. So, you know.
So it's their fault.
Yeah, it's your fault. Okay.
Well, let's talk about this a minute. You touched on something interesting. I think a lot of people think, if they're familiar with the Indiana Jones films, and they go on the attraction, they seem to think that the attraction is based wholly on the second film, The Temple of Doom.
No, it's mostly based on the first film, you know, in one way or another. There's a few asides to that, but most of the little scenes that you pass through are reflections of the first Raiders. There is definitely nothing from the fourth film in this. I didn't say that. That was not editorial.
There's so much I could say right now, but I'm not. Okay. I'm not. But so that he just killed that internet rumor of the re-theme of Indy. No flying saucers, no aliens, no crystal skulls. Right?
Right.
Okay. Moving on to our next slide.
Yes. So, after you get a few really cool ideas, they get antsy to figure out how it fits in. And Adventureland is the smallest footprint land here at Disneyland, and we were about to put the largest ride that's in the park in that land. And so how did it fit? And as we showed you earlier, we were still on the idea that we'd integrate the Jungle Cruise and the train ride around the park and the looping coaster and then the troop transport. Not sponsored by the
J people. We'll just call them the J people.
And so this was an early model with Bob Beranek doing the work on it here of how all that might look. So you're looking in the lower corner there is the elephant bathing pool, and then and that's where you went in from the elephant bathing pool, and then you came out just about where the Trap Safari is, or not the Trap Safari, but the wrecked camp is right there.
We were talking earlier about the size of Disneyland. You just made mention that the biggest attraction at Disneyland is in the smallest land in the park. But Disneyland's size almost plays to its strength a little bit because you have to be so imaginative with things.
I think Disneyland is the most charming of all the parks because of that spatial thing. Today we know so much. Well, we know so much today that things get big like this arena rather than all the cute things that we have here like Carnation now. Fantasy Fair and things like that that are scaled back to when it was more personal. And so I really enjoyed the challenge, and I said, well, even if it is 1/8 of a mile from the treehouse out to the boarding of the ride, by the time you get there, you're going to be totally immersed in this world that is not Adventureland, but it's back in 1935 in the deltas of India.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this next model. Now, explain this to us.
This is where finance started getting worried. They started to see the immensity of this.
No, they started getting worried.
Yeah, they got
Okay.
worried. Okay, that's it. And so conferences were held, and we were, I think, kind of given marching orders to start thinking practical at this point. Yeah.
So then it evolved to this, and
Yeah.
that's a pretty famous rendering.
Yeah,
We've seen
Chuck
that.
Ballou came on board, and we had a pretty tight budget now. And so we started saying, okay, what is it we can really do? And so this was, I think, the rendering that locked in what you all know to be the queuing area, the exterior, the facade. It's really minor for such a big attraction, you know, to have that tiny little temple. And I love that it's rather unpretentious. And then you keep going and going, and it gets bigger and bigger, and finally you're in this enormous thing. So in a way, I think it's actually more innovative than if you'd seen a big thing where it really, pretended to be what it is. This way, you have no idea.
And Indy has some of the greatest concept renderings of the modern attractions. You just came from a show today at WDI.
Yeah.
Tell them a little bit about that.
Well, we have a research library that has a gallery space in it, and today we opened at 3 o'clock a big exhibit on all the artwork from Indiana Jones, and Drew Struzan was there, who did the original poster, and a lot of the team, the producer, Susan Bonds, and so forth. It was really a great afternoon. So if I'm a little hoarse tonight, it's because I haven't seen you in 20 years. There was a lot of that going on this afternoon. But it's a great exhibit. If you know anybody that works for the company, you can weasel your way in there. Worth seeing.
You didn't hear that from Tony.
No,
Tony just didn't
erase
say that. Yeah,
I
erase
will
that
be
from your
told
memory.
not to say that at the second,
Look, all of a sudden the tent looks like the cone of silence.
Yes. My microphone isn't working.
That's right. Let's take a look at some of the other renderings.
Yeah. Okay, you all know this room, and it was establishing the idea of how do we make people comfortable with waiting in line 2 hours? And I thought we need a gift or some way of saying, if you wait in line, you're going to get a reward that makes it worth waiting in line for 2 hours. So I thought, all right, let's go through all the things that would change your life for the better that you'd be willing to put 2 hours in on. I thought limitless wealth, eternal youth, or getting views of the future so you could bet on the next World Series. That would be pretty neat, you know. So I would be willing to work 2 hours in line to get those. And so we created that way. The only thing we had to do now was come up with some reason that nobody could ever get those things, or we'd be out of business pretty quick. So we created this area that's, really, I think, worked very, very well in confusing people as to what was going on. I remember the internet, when there was an internet or a buzz on it, where people were writing in saying, I've been to the future knowledge, and I've seen the wealth, but I've never seen youth, or whatever. No, I've been in that, but I haven't been there. So it was really intriguing for people trying to figure out how we had pulled that off. But this shows you some of the designs of how that experience would be reconfigured depending on what door you've gone through.
Yeah, I never knew that area of the attraction had a name, the Hall of Promise.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It sounds very intriguing.
Sounds good to me. Just like troop transport.
Yeah, that's right.
Now this is just indicative. Of course, someone in your car of 12, and this way you can't see their faces, so you don't know who it is. But I can guarantee you that every single troop transport that's gone past Mara, one of those 12 has looked into the eyes.
All right, so how many of you have looked into the eyes of Mara?
Okay. All right, so we have never had to give away one Hall of Promise. So you're all doing just what we thought you would do. So that's worked out very good for the health of the Walt Disney Company. Yeah.
Now this rendering, though, there's something in this rendering that I love.
Yeah.
Indy is wrapped up in this snake.
Can you see?
Of all things.
Yeah, right there. Again, snuck into the rendering.
And this next one, what do we got here? The troop transport is doing what?
I didn't say all the things. I mean, once you did that forbidden act of looking into those eyes. There was all manner of things that were indicative of primarily the first film, but everything else. What you heard the guests say, there were bugs, there were snakes, there were skeletons and spirits, and ultimately the dark guys, what do you call it, the booby traps. That was one that nobody said, oh, booby traps. I would have thought that would have been an obvious one, but and of course the biggest booby trap was the rolling ball, so that became the finale. And it was funny, how many have been on Countdown? Well, now it's called Dinosaur, right? Yeah. Okay. That dates me. So some of you have been on that. That's the exact same ride track as Indiana Jones. And so when I'm riding it, I'm going, there's Indy at the gate, there's the dark people. So when Michael Eisner got to the end of that, there wasn't anything where you go down under where the rolling ball would be. And they got into the unload, he goes, where was the rolling ball? And they said, well, this isn't that show. And he said, I know, I'm just using that as a statement that you need some big thing. So when you go through there the next time and you see the big Tyrannosaurus come out at you, that's their rolling ball.
Yeah. Now, in this rendering, Alex was telling me about this earlier. The little boy driving the troop transport behind me, that looks like Short Round from the second film. He has a little Yankees cap on. And then the older gent in the back seat looks like John Hench.
That could be too.
Yeah, the great Imagineer.
I'll have to ask Chuck when I get back up there. I've never noticed that myself.
Yeah.
These fans, and Alex is a fan like I am, are really keep you on your toes for figuring this stuff out. I think he's right, though.
So we've talked about the troop transport, but let's talk about the ride vehicle itself.
A rendering like that is what we did in order to give the engineers a framework of what the vehicle was going to need to do. So what you saw there of the transport going down the stairway, we knew we weren't going to go down real stairs, but we had to see if we could make the thing feel like you were going downstairs. So that was the start, and then George Mcginnis, who has done countless ride vehicles here at Disney, he and Bob Gurr were pretty much responsible for everything you've ridden from a vehicle standpoint. He most recently did the Americana cable cars up there in Glendale.
Those are great.
Yeah. And so George began developing the ride vehicle from a aesthetic and functional standpoint. And then we went on to bring in Homer, who started doing these sketches that you saw one of that would demonstrate the vehicle doing a lot of really out-of-control things. And for the most part, we were able to get it to do these things. So on the next one, you'll see...
so we have the collapsing bridge.
Yeah, we were able to do that.
The molten lava.
And to go off the edge of the cliff a little bit, yes, we were. However, we weren't always able to do everything. And
you wanted to have boulders falling.
Yeah, we wanted to have boulders falling on the car, and that, when we went in there, they told us no. And it wasn't so much that we were going to hurt you guys, it was that we might damage the car,
But now,
we did, however.
Yes, tell them this story, because I wasn't aware of this.
No, I was really wanting to do this. I said, no one's ever been able to have something fall. You either use rubber rocks or something like that, and it looks fake. So we came up that ice has the same consistency as real slate stone. And so we developed an ice machine. It was in the ride for about 6 weeks. Did anyone here get to see it when it worked? There are a few. This is like the Hatbox Ghost in terms of legend. And it worked great, and then it would hit, it would break into a smithereens right in front of the car, just like real ice. It was colored with tea, so it looked like brown rock. And then it cascaded down into the pools at the bottom, and then the goal was for it all to be pumped back up. But it didn't melt. And so it became a jam up down there, and it just built up and built up until there were big piles. And none of the guys wanted to go in there and push it along, so they ended its life. And they said the ride is good enough without it, but it really was neat when we had it in there.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the really unique track system, if you will.
Yeah, it's not really on a track. The slot in the floor is it transmits the data and the power on board, but it's a four-wheel drive. All the wheels are independent, so we could literally curve them in and then put the brakes on, or we could swerve and slide the car back and forth. So as you ride through that, you are literally experiencing the driving commands that are individually sent out to each vehicle, so they're all slightly different, doing different things along the road.
Now you had a name for the vehicle.
The Enhanced Motion Vehicle.
But you also had a nickname for it.
Yes, I did. we did not know it was going to work. So the company was really leery about having it attached to a Lucas, project. So we came up with a name that in no way, if it failed, and we didn't do it, would be attached to Lucasfilm. So we thought we were in the clear completely. So we came up with a name for this vehicle. It was called the Thor vehicle.
And you can meet Thor over at Tomorrowland. Well, now, tell us about this piece of footage we're going to see of the Thor vehicle.
Okay. Before we could prove it out from an engineering standpoint, a bunch of us that are just closet engineers jerry-rigged a thing where we bought a truck and we put a off-the-shelf mall-type simulator. You saw these things in malls where you would pay $5 and you'd watch this little video while you bounced around. And so we bought one of those, put it on the back of a truck, and then put cardboard framework on it so it would look kind of like the Indy Jeep. And this is what you're going to see right here is the Thor vehicle, phase 1.
All right, let's take a look.
The computers are riding behind the Jeep on that little following cart. And now, in terms of your life, in this case, it was based on the Jeep, the enhanced motion vehicle, being able to follow that white line painted on the ground. So there's no slot in the floor or anything. It's just following a white painted line, like a little robot.
So the computers are really in the back on that little trailer?
That little cart. And we blindfolded people and we played Sala's voice saying, "Oh, Indy, we're about to go over the cliff." And it was so convincing that after writing that, they gave us the go-ahead to go into production on it.
Wow.
That was exciting factor.
That's really cool. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it was fun to ride, too.
Sure.
Just saying, please follow that white line. Please.
Don't turn left. Don't turn left.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about the vehicle technology and the programming of it.
Yeah, well, once they spent 18 months up in Valencia in a secret warehouse building about a half a mile from a little theme park that's up there, that's been around, Six Flags,
something,
And I remember when it was perfected and they were confident it would work here from 8 in the morning until midnight every day, Michael got off of it, Michael Eisner, and said, "We should go put flyers in the parking lot of that other park and tell them there's a better ride right across the freeway here than anything they've got." So that was kind of a neat feeling there. After that point, then we went into actually the show work, and the vehicles were brought down here, and you can see Dave Durham sitting in the back right-hand seat there of the third row back. That is definitely the roughest seat on the ride, and that's where everything was programmed from that seat. And Skip Lang, who's giving him a sidewalk superintendent way of, telling what to do. Every single thing that you feel, the first thing that was put in was the road noise. So the little pebbles and things that you're kind of rumbling over, they laid that bed in first because it's glass smooth. It's just like this. And so each thing was added, and I think David told me he wrote it about 2,000 times before he got all the inputs into it.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, talk to us a little bit about this architecture. You mentioned it before.
Mm-hmm. Well, it isn't specifically any one film. This is more like the Delta region of India.
Uh-huh.
And our thought was, we had it open a couple of days for private parties and stuff where you could walk through it and down to the loading area, and they had some hosts in there just to get a sense of how people were going to move through it.
Wait a minute, so they walked through the whole queue,
yeah, and
they
then
got
they
to load.
And our goal, and this is what was neat, is people were excited and thrilled just to get to do that, And I thought, well, if you think about it, we should develop as cool a thing here as you would actually experience going to Angkor Wat or any of the great temple regions of the Southeast Asian area. And that's what I think, done. By the time you get to the loading platform, you've had a pretty good experience for the real world, And at that point, then you get on a Disney quality ride, and we figured that was the way to take it over the top.
Well, I'm trying to understand these previews. So they go through the queue line.
Yep.
They get to the loading area, and the cast member says, "Psych."
Yeah. No, they tell them how cool the ride is going to be, and we want you all back here on March 3rd, and won't it be cool? And it was just like tonight, that they were sold out well in advance just to get that little peek. And then, of course, the buzz, you know, it was good buzz. So it was a good experience.
Yeah.
We were so excited to see people in there, you know.
Let's talk about this little relic here.
Yeah, this is kind of controversial. This is, in blood, this is the actual vehicle that was from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's got all the accommodations for the stuntman to go underneath the vehicle, and you can see that brand that's a German car manufacturer that's not
That's
Jeep.
not Jeep.
Yeah, and they're really cool vehicles. It's been broken off by Harrison Ford, and to further this, there's a little golf ball right there. Now it'll be stolen now that I pointed out. That you would only do if it was a movie prop. But when Steven Spielberg came out here, he absolutely was obsessed with the fact that it wasn't the one from the ride, but we picked it up in a prop shop in London and had it, shipped back here to the States. So it's all made out of movie prop things. There's nothing about it that's a real truck. So, I hate to disagree with a legend, but there you are. It's the real one.
So don't try and jump in and have it turn over. It's not going to start.
No.
All right, let's move on to the Maraglyphics.
Yeah, you all got a decoder card, I think, tonight. And that was courtesy of Alex's great idea to bring that back. So the middle sign there says, "Beware of the eyes of Mara." And we sort of set up in that mural there the 3 opportunities that the temple brings to life. And then over on the obelisk, this is the obelisk of doom, which shows you all the terrible things that could happen if you don't obey the rules of the temple, and of course a few people don't. And that great footage that we showed you at the beginning, you saw the bit about the 2 fountains there. So I'm not going to tell you which one brings life and which one is death. So of all the fountains in Disneyland, this is probably the one you don't want to drink out of.
Nice meeting half of you tonight.
Yeah, right.
Now, there's also kind of a cool thing on the wall behind the obelisk.
Yeah, if you look closely, there's a lot of initials of team members. But the one that always puts a lump in my throat is the last one is a FW in Maraglyphics, and that was for Frank Wells, who had passed away right about that time. And that was our little aside to Frank.
Yeah. Now, we have a real fun piece of footage that, again, I wasn't aware of. I hadn't seen before, which was kind of cool. But you attribute this to when you were going through your Sunset Boulevard phase.
Yes, this was in the show early on, and then to accommodate more intense information about safety, we had to trim it. So they took this out. But I was really into the musical Sunset Boulevard. I don't know, this Norma Desmond thing and whatnot. So Pam Fisher, the writer, listened to me ragging on about this play, and so she wrote this Nora West character into the pre-show. So you haven't seen this for about 10 years now, I don't think so.
And also listen to the prediction about Major League Baseball at the end. All right? Let's take a watch.
Louder.
Silent film star Nora West, one of the temple's recent visitors. She chose the Fountain of Eternal Youth. No more matronly roles for Nora. Move over Jean Harlow. This jubilant junior visited the Chamber of Earthly Riches. Looks like his allowance has gone up. Say, buddy, could you spare a dime? How about 1 million of them?
Why, even Babe Ruth himself visited the Temple of the Forbidden Eye. He entered the Observatory of the Future. Now he predicts that baseball players will someday be paid millions of dollars a year. Perhaps even the vision of the gods is a bit blurred. Will it happen?
Oh, that Babe Ruth. What a prognosticator, that guy.
It'll never happen.
It'll never happen. Now, talk to us about Mara. And you mentioned earlier about, you made it impossible for anyone not to look at it.
Right, exactly. We had to. I would have had my neck wrung if we had to pay off on any of those things. So we've got a fun little thing for you here. We're going to take you through the...
Right, the automatic. Explain to everybody what an automatic is.
An automatic is, in those days when there wasn't digital and CD and all of that, we actually had to put a camera down in the models and move it through so you get a rough experience of what the ride would be like. You're going to hear Eddie Sato's voice, I think, narrating this, who was working with us early on, and he's just got a great speaking voice. You know him with some of the train announcements here at the park. Now arriving from the trip around.
That's Eddie.
Yeah, and so he's going to take you through the ride, and if I have something to comment about on it, and remember, this was to set up, like, to see if it was working in terms of a story thing and getting across the idea that if somebody has really looked into the eyes and we're stuck now, trying to escape the temple.
All right, let's take a look.
In the load area, we are greeted by the ride operator, I think you might recognize him, and load into Jeeps on both sides of the platform.
This model is about, you'd be this tall in the model, about 6 inches.
As you recall, the Jeep seats 12 passengers. Once loaded, guests head for the Chamber of Destiny, where they will embark on one of 3 paths. Icons above each door clearly show that the Jeep ahead went through a different door, either the path to future knowledge to your left, or the road to youth to your right. Here we go through the center door depicting wealth. The idol at the end of the Hall of Promise will again be lit according to the door you pass through. The eyes explode in a fit of anger as someone has looked. Control of your vehicle is seized by the angry spirit and plunged into the Tunnel of Torment, which features a lightning decay special effect. This is the transition point. The entire feeling, character of the ride changes from a Jeep tour to a wild adventure. We also transition from white to black light. At the gates of eternal doom, we see Indiana Jones for the first time, keeping the gates closed, allowing us to escape. This rendering depicts the kinetic feeling of the big chaos room. Here guests will see other vehicles, encounter dramatic special effects, fire, steam explosions, falling debris, and a death ray from a huge skull as they try to escape. The scale of the room, 50 feet deep, 140 feet long, and 100 feet wide, will add to the sense of peril. The first high-speed portion of the ride will be through a rockwork grotto filled with mummies and a huge wind effect. After squishing through a room filled with bugs using a headlight projection effect, guests will get their chance to cross the perilous suspension bridge. The bridge ropes will sway and accentuate the motion of the Jeep itself. Leaving the treacherous bridge behind us, sinister gargoyles seem to loom above. We ask ourselves, snakes, why did it have to be snakes? Suddenly, a huge animated cobra strikes out at us, the invaders of his lair. Sliding wildly down an eroding bank, we enter the candlelit interior of the giant skull. Racing past the lava pit, we enter the dark rat cave where we will use the motion base and steering of the Jeep to its fullest extent prior to bursting through a projection of rats jumping into the vehicle. We blow through a crossfire of poison darts into a narrow cavern. Here we see Indiana Jones dangling overhead. Suddenly, the giant ball is revealed, rolling toward us. To avoid it, we reverse, and then dive beneath the rolling ball through a collapsing floor. Amidst a haze of dust and rubble, we survive, only to see a tattered but triumphant Indiana Jones exclaim, "Tourists, why did it have to be tourists?" We laugh and hear the strains of the Indiana Jones theme as we move into the unload area.
I would have bought it.
Yeah, I know. I say, whenever we're trying to sell something, we go, who could sell us snake shoes? That was, Eddie's forte. He was just really good at putting all the energy in it.
Now, this attraction has one of the greatest finales ever.
Yeah.
And it's all about adventure and all of that. But it also comes with one of the great equations you guys used to use.
Yeah, I don't know whether I should share this with you, but there's a thing that always works, and I kind of test my projects out on that to see if it's in there, and if it is, then we know we've got you. And that is fear minus death equals thrill. Okay? All of you want to get really close to that middle word without experiencing it, right? The closer we can get you to that, and see, I think one of Disney's hallmarks is we get pretty close to that without anybody worrying about it. So, yeah, if we can do that, that's what I think generates thrill. It's one of those, as John Hench would say, those inborn things that you cannot erase.
Now, there was one fellow that was pretty scared of this attraction, and you met him.
Yeah, this was a Disney Channel.
Yeah, does anybody remember a show on the Disney Channel called Disneyland Inside Out?
Yeah.
And it was hosted by a redheaded fellow by the name of J.D. Roth.
Right.
And tell us about that.
Okay, so J.D. came out and he'd cited the whole thing out, and so he was really personable, really gregarious young guy. And then he says, I just have to tell you one thing. You're going to get one ride out of me, and that's all. I'm so frightened by this ride. I've already ridden it, and it took me like about 2 hours to calm down. I think I can go through it one more time. So while you're watching this footage, I'm worried that he's going to lose it in the middle of the ride, and he's worried he's going to lose it. So,
yeah, the best thing is watch JD's face. He's faking it all the way through, but watch Tony's face watching JD. Yeah. There's one particular moment in this video where you go, somebody's going to lose it.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, roll it.
When last we saw JD, he and Disney Imagineer Tony Baxter were on a runaway troop transport through the Indiana Jones adventure. One of the most amazing things about this ride is you never take the same trip twice. Computers actually decide your fate, changing the effects you experience every time.
Okay, so there's fire up here.
That's right. We've got fire, we've got falling rocks, and it all has to happen every 18 seconds.
Kidding.
There's someone else right behind us. All these things have to happen in a movie. It's only one.
And we're moving
here
pretty
from
fast.
8 in the morning till midnight. Every 18 seconds, no matter what you're doing, something in here is happening.
It is an incredible ride. Woo! Now this bridge right here, how does the effect work when we fall? Oh!
Wow, that was a different program. We have about 160,000 variations of different movements that you can experience on the ride.
So every time you go on the ride, it's going to be different.
That's right, because the computer on board this vehicle can pick any one of those.
Like that, right
like
there.
That, yes. Now we're going into the very heart of Laura. So there you are.
Well, now, Tony, talk to us about bringing something like this from just the germ of an idea to reality.
Well, you know, Brian is an incredible artist, and this was a painting that we agreed we were going to try to do. But one of the things I'm always really conscious of, some other companies, which will remain anonymous, cheat a little bit and say, this is what we're going to build, and then you go out there and there's a name placard and a roller coaster or something. But we put this out there, and I said, it's really, you know, to all of our credit to try and deliver on this so that it fulfills the promise we made to the guests. So if you look at that rendering, and then we'll cross-dissolve here to how it came out, I think we came pretty darn close to what we promised people we were going to be able to deliver.
I should say. So, we're going to wrap up, but I think I can speak on behalf of everybody here in the audience to thank you and all of the great Imagineers. Here at Disneyland, and well, if adventure has a name, it's Indiana Jones, right? So thank you, everybody. We're going to leave you with one last clip, and we hope you have a great night tonight here at Disneyland. Thank you.
Now dare to cross forbidden boundaries to the ultimate adventure. Come on! It's more than a ride. It's real. Now your fears have a name. The Indiana Jones Adventure, new at Disneyland.